The relationship between the State of Israel and the nation of Iran is one of the most complicated in the Middle East. But it wasn't always this way. From 1948 to 1979, these two nations were actually allies. Today we look at how Israel and Iran went from being allies to becoming sworn enemies. This is the Israel story. 1948, Israel declares independence. It's called the establishment of the State of Israel. And within a year, it sparks a war with neighboring Arab states. In 1949, those neighboring Arab states, they sue for peace and establish diplomatic relations with Israel. But there's one key exception. That exception is Iran. Now, why would Iran not want to be the first Arab state to establish diplomatic relations with Israel? Well, because at that time, Iran had a massive Jewish population, about 90,000 of them living in the country. And Iran's Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, he didn't want to upset his Muslim population by establishing any kind of relationship with the State of Israel. But behind closed doors, the Shah and Israel, they would become very good friends. In fact, just 3 weeks after the war broke out between Israel and those Arab states, the Shah sent his personal envoy to Tel Aviv. And that envoy, he met with Israeli Prime Minister David Ben-Gurion, and both sides, they agreed to establish a relationship. Not an official one yet, but a secret one. They wanted to keep it a secret for several reasons. No. 1. The Shah. He didn't want to lose face in front of the Arab world. He also didn't want to upset the United States, who he was also cultivating close relations with at the time. And then finally, both countries, they felt that a formal relationship might put them in danger. Specifically when it came to the Soviet Union. At that time, the Soviets, they were arming the Arab states that were fighting against Israel. So both the Shah and Israel, they didn't want to make things worse. But still, despite having no diplomatic relations, Iran and Israel, they would trade extensively. In fact, by the 1960s, Iran was Israel's second biggest trading partner. Only Europe, it was ahead of them. As for what they were trading, well, Iran was exporting a lot of oil to Israel. And in exchange, Israel, they would send Iran military equipment, like trucks and jeeps. By the late 1960s, Iran was sending up to 60% of their oil exports to Israel. That's according to Iranian officials. Iran has been saying that Israel was buying more than half of their oil. But according to Israeli records, that number was closer to 35%. So much so that when Israel started building their first oil refinery in the mid-1960s, Iran's oil minister at the time, he said that Israel was going to cut them out of the loop. In addition to trade, both countries had military cooperation as well. In the early 1950s, Israel offered to help train Iran's army. And at first, the Shah rejected the offer, but he accepted it later on. The training was done in secret, of course, and the reason why the Shah agreed to it, well, it's pretty obvious. He was surrounded by enemies who were receiving aid from the Soviet Union. And if he wanted to defend Iran, then he needed all the help that he could get. And over the years, the relationship continued to grow. By the 1960s, Iran and Israel, they were exchanging intelligence and even planning joint military operations. For example, both countries, they agreed to intercept Soviet cargo planes that were flying to Syria. The cargo planes, they were carrying weapons and they were going to Syria because the Soviets, they were arming them as well. So Israel and Iran, they worked together to intercept those planes and prevent the weapons from reaching Syria. Not only that, but the two countries, they also cooperated when it came to nuclear matters. Israel, they had a nuclear reactor that was built by American companies. And the Shah, well, he wanted to build one too. So Israel, they shared all the technical know-how with Iran and sold them nuclear fuel as well. But perhaps the peak of Israel and Iran's relationship happened in the late 1960s. During that time, Israel developed their own ballistic missiles. They developed something called Project Flower.
Right.
And some of you might have heard about this already because it was declassified in 2018. This was a top secret project. It would involve France, Germany, Italy, and Iran as well. Together, they developed and produced more than 500 missiles. Those missiles, they ranged from 60 to 120 miles, and all of them were manufactured in Iran. This was a huge deal because Iran was one of the few Muslim-majority countries that cooperated with Israel when it came to defense. One of the other ones, that one is Turkey. Today, their relationship is not great, let's say. But back then, Turkey was another country that was part of this program. Now here's where things get interesting. One of the main purposes of Project Flower was to allow Iran to strike Israel if they wanted to. In other words, it was a deterrent. But at the same time, it was also an insurance policy for Israel, because if Iran ever attacked them, then Israel could retaliate and hit back with the same missile. Basically, both sides, they kept each other in check. Now, beyond weapons, Israel and Iran, they also cooperated when it came to culture. In 1956, Iran opened the first Iranian restaurant in Tel Aviv, and according to some accounts, Israeli food was served in Iranian restaurants as well. Basically, people from both countries, they could eat foods that tasted similar to what they were used to back home. But starting in the 1960s, Iran made it easier for some of them to immigrate to Israel. Over 80,000 Iranian Jews, they left Iran between 1960 and 1979. We can go on and on about the relationship between Israel and Iran during this time period, but the bottom line is that it was a good one. Israel and Iran, they trusted each other. They traded extensively with each other. They did business with each other. They even helped each other when it came to defense. So what happened? Why did Iran suddenly turn on Israel? The answer is the 1979 Islamic Revolution. That revolution, it completely changed everything. Khomeini, the leader of that revolution, he hated Israel. He even said, quote, "We must cut the hands that extend out to the Zionist entity." After the revolution, all relations between Israel and Iran, they were severed. Israel, they closed their embassy in Tehran. They also stopped exporting oil to Iran. And the Shah, he no longer had a relationship with his biggest trading partner. He moved to Israel. In 1980, Iran's new government, the revolutionary government, they severed all relations with Israel. Then 4 years later, Iran, they started supporting terrorist groups in Lebanon that were targeting Israelis. In 1982, Israel invaded Lebanon to try to stop Iran from attacking them. That conflict had lasted for 6 years. Today, both countries, they don't even recognize each other. And the current Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, he calls Iran the head of the snake. When it comes to the relationship between Iran and Israel, we should learn from history. Just because two countries have a bad relationship today doesn't mean that they always have. Israel and Iran, they were once allies. They cooperated extensively with each other. They traded with each other. They did business with each other. Even when it came to defense, they cooperated. And many people will argue that Iran never recognized Israel. Sure, they didn't recognize Israel on paper, but in reality, they did recognize Israel de facto. How do I know that? Well, because Iran and Israel, they continued to do business with each other. They continued to trade with each other. They continued to share intelligence with each other. And they wouldn't have done all of that if Iran didn't recognize Israel. Sometimes we get lost in all the chaos and craziness that's happening in the world today. And we forget that there was a time when Israel and Iran were allies. Maybe there can be a time in the future where they can become allies again. Hopefully that day comes soon. Hey everyone, thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe if you haven't already. There are more videos coming out every single week. If you enjoy reading, we have a newsletter as well. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time.